Good morning, everybody. Morning. Yay, we are here to talk about innovation. You know, it's exciting, it's fun stuff. So I hope you're looking forward to a good day. We have lots of energy. I'm going to do a very, very brief introduction to the day because I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some things that we're doing. But it is an action-packed day with a lot of good stuff. And basically, we sat down about a year ago and said, what are the key trends that we think are going to affect marketing in the next 12 months? What are the technologies? Who are the people? What are the tools? What are the companies that we think will define innovation in marketing in 2012? And we came up with a list of people, a list of companies we'd like to come, and we pretty much ticked off every single one of those companies and trends on our list. So it's a really, really exciting day for us. So this morning, first of all, I'm going to do a quick introduction to our new company, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute. And then we've got an action-packed morning with a really great speech from James Elias, the UK Marketing Director of Google, who I'll introduce more later. We've got a panel talking about how you need to innovate or die. We're taking a break about 10:45 so you can restock on caffeine. And then I'll be coming back to talk a bit about the latest marketing trends that we see affecting consumers both in the UK and around the world. Then that segues neatly into a panel where we've got some of the people who work for those companies and are experimenting with those trends. Then at 12:30, we've got a great case study about using live data, creativity, and social media with McLaren. And then we'll be having lunch at about 1 o'clock. So an action-packed morning, lots more to come in the afternoon. With some of the hottest startups in London and in Europe showing their wares and giving you a chance to interact with them, as well as looking at some more key trends. And then I have to remind you all that this is a great value event because not only do you get to come to watch some great speakers and hear about very cool stuff, if you would like to, and it's our invitation for you to stay a little bit longer to have some free drink, free food, and watch people win awards. Right? You get all that as well. So at 5:15, we're all going to shut up and we'll bring the booze out. And then about 6:15, we'll be giving out some awards and people will be clapping and getting very excited. So you are all invited to that, so you feel free to hang around and have some fun afterwards. So I want to do a quick introduction to what's been happening with us, because as you might have seen outside, there'll be some branding that you weren't completely familiar with. And then I'm going to hand over to James. So we started out as a community site focused on marketers in the UK, and that was the vision. That was the business plan that I wrote on a holiday to Ibiza about 5 years ago. I suppose, in retrospect, it wasn't the best idea to write a business plan on a holiday to Ibiza. But our business model quite quickly changed, and we've now expanded significantly around the world. Our training business has grown 500% in the last 2 years, and we've opened offices in New York, Sao Paulo, and Singapore. So we're genuinely a global company focused on digital change in organizations. And we've developed some new products and some new platforms. And what that meant was that eventually we realized that we really did have to change the way that we thought about what we do. So we started out, and you've all known us up until this point, as You Talk Marketing. But from today, and henceforth, for forevermore, well, as long as forevermore can be in the digital world, we are now known as the Knowledge Engineers. Woo! Okay, so some of you sort of sit there scratching your head going, what on earth does that mean? Let me briefly explain why we've called ourselves that. So what we really realize that we do is that we help people deal with some challenges. And one of the main challenges we help people deal with is the fact that marketing has moved from a soft skill industry, where it was relatively difficult to tell, whether or not what you were doing was working or not, to a hard skill industry, where there is a right way and a wrong way to do marketing. Okay, so when you're building a page on a website or for Facebook, there is a right way and a wrong way to build that page to make it as visible as possible to consumers or to your target audience. And learning about all of these new right ways takes a massive shift in the knowledge that people working in marketing have. So we really come back to this word of knowledge that marketers increasingly need, a more formal knowledge bank, information, skills, and know-how that helps them get their job done. Why the engineering piece? Well, if the whole world of marketing has become much more focused on knowledge, if knowledge is more important, we believe that the role of learning and the role of knowledge in organizations really has to change. Okay? There are many companies that do not have particularly strong focus on giving marketing people knowledge and information that they need. And they need to take a new approach to building their employees' capability in a world which is constantly changing and a world where their employees need new skills. And they should be using metrics and technology to create long-term programs to make sure that their employees can deliver best practice marketing. And you're going to see some of the people who do that today. And you can hear from the way they talk about their companies that the companies that invest in building up their employees' knowledge by making sure that they can deliver to best practice standards are the companies that succeed in this new digital world. So knowledge engineering is about getting the right digital and marketing knowledge to the right people in the right format at the right time, and that means that we can drive an organization's business objectives forward in a time of monumental change. So that's what we do, that's the knowledge engineers. And as you can see, we've been pretty busy. We trained about 15,000 people in face-to-face training last year in over 35 different countries. So if you haven't experienced any of that, do give us a call. Very happy for you to come along and try something out. We have a great partnership in the UK with the IAB, so those are open training sessions that anyone can come along to. But it's not just about training face-to-face. When we think about engineering knowledge and giving people the right knowledge, then we also realize that you need to have great online platforms as well. So we've got 3. So we've got UTalk Marketing, which you all know already. We've got the Digital Knowledge Centre, and we've got 12 Ahead. So the Digital Knowledge Centre is an aggregation of all of the best practice skills and information that you can get, and it's all on demand. So we're now using that when we're running face-to-face training programs as a place to be able to go and get knowledge after they've had their training. And that launched in a revised version about 2 weeks ago, so do go and check it out if you haven't seen it before. And then our second platform, which is very exciting, we launched in the middle of January. So this is a global innovation platform. It's run by Andy McCormick, who's sitting at the back, who joined us from being the editor of Revolution. And 12 Ahead is all about the latest global technology trends that will disrupt marketing. It's super cool. Basically, the product is everything you need to know about technology in a really easy way to understand and digest. Okay, so we've aggregated all of the new kind of innovations around brands and technology around 12 key trends, which is why it's called 12 Ahead. So it's easy for you to access the information that you need. And then you all know and hopefully love UTalk Marketing, so that's our news site, and that's read by over 150,000 people every month. So those are our 3 platforms. I hope that's given you a quick introduction into the new brand, the Knowledge Engineers. If you have any questions about that, or you think that I'm completely mad, do you come and see me afterwards, have a chat to me over lunch, or laugh in my face, whatever you think is appropriate. So from now on, all of the branding and business cards you see from all of us will be the Knowledge Engineers. So that's enough from me. We have a very, very exciting group of speakers today, so I don't want to get in the way of them having their time. We seem to make a bit of a habit of this. We find people to speak who are normally in their sort of first or second day in their job, and it's normally like the first presentation they've had to give in their job. And we've struck gold again by asking James Elias to come and speak. So we've worked with James for quite a number of years at Google. He's now got a new job, which he started yesterday. So this is his maiden speech as the new UK marketing director of Google. And clearly, when we think about innovation and we think about companies that place bets and spend large amounts of money on innovation in our world of digital, then there is no greater company to kick off the day than Google. So I'd like to welcome James to the stage. Thank you.
So thanks very much, Neil. I'm James Elias, and as Neil points out, this is day 2, but before you all panic and ask why am I up on stage talking about Google, I've been at Google for 4.5 years, so hopefully in that time I've picked up a few useful lessons about how we go about innovation. And that's what I've been asked to talk to you all about today. And I thought it would be helpful to do that by focusing on a few principles that we use in terms of how we operate, in terms of how we build products, in terms of how we do our marketing. And hopefully I can bring those to life with some examples and give you a feel for how we go about doing this at Google. But first up, a lot of people, a lot of my friends, for example, when I tell them I do marketing at Google, they say, well, hang on a sec, Google doesn't actually do marketing. And I say, well, thanks very much for the vote of confidence. Yes, we do. Although when I stop to think about it, perhaps we don't do it in a kind of a traditional advertising sense. I think it's fair to say that we're doing more of that these days, particularly as we move from a company that's sort of very well understood and focused on search, and we look to explain how we can help people and advertisers in other areas of their businesses and their lives. But when I stop to think about sort of how companies, for example, or brands that market commoditized products do what they do. It's very much putting the magic into the advertising. So the product itself doesn't necessarily differentiate. They're looking to do that through their marketing. At Google, we like to make sure that we start with the products, and the products are very much where the magic starts. And so it made sense to me to think then about what are the kind of guiding principles when it comes to building products? What are the innovation principles that we use at Google? And how can those be applied to the marketing that we do? And so these are the principles, and I'm going to walk through them with some examples, both the products and marketing. You'll see that many of them are not particularly original. I think taken together they can produce some pretty amazing results, and hopefully I'll have a chance to bring them to life for you. So first up, focus on the user and all else will follow. So this is something that Larry and Sergey, the founder of Google, wrote in their founder's letter when the company went public some time ago. It is by far and away the most important principle that I'm going to talk about today. And it actually starts with search. So back in the late 90s, when Google launched search, most search engines allow people to buy placements in the search listings. Larry and Sergey decided this was wrong, and I think obviously rightly so, and instead made sure that ads were very clearly differentiated from the search results. In other words, that you couldn't influence the search results themselves, and placed a really high premium on making sure that the ads were relevant to users too. Another saying that they have that was also in that same letter is fast beats slow. This is a stopwatch that Larry actually gave to engineers, a whole bunch of them, a couple of years ago. And apparently, I've not seen this for myself, although I'd love to. They do literally walk around the floor timing experiments and prototypes and new products that they're building. They place a huge premium on this. Now, you might think that sounds a little ridiculous, but this led to one of the biggest innovations in our search products of the last few years, something called Google Instant. And hopefully many of you are familiar with it. Now, when you search on Google, the search results will change dynamically as you type. So sort of letter by letter, the search results will change differently. We've noticed that even tiny changes in speed will influence the way people behave online and search. So this is actually a really big deal. Firstly, it's just a ginormous challenge from an engineering point of view. Now, when you search, we're running 5, 6, 7 queries simultaneously, where previously we ran one. So from a sort of an infrastructure side of things, that's a big challenge. But it saves something like 5 to 7 seconds a search, kind of so what you all say. Well, across 1 billion or so searches a day, that's something like 3.5 billion seconds, which means that for every second of the day, we're saving 11 hours of user time. And this is one of our kind of big changes to search in recent years. So what does this mean from a marketing point of view? Well, we also try and put the user first. And for us, that means thinking of ways in which we can make what we do as simple as possible to the end user, removing a lot of the complexity. A lot of our products are quite tricky to use to begin with. Finding ways in which we can make our products real, that we can connect them to people's lives and show how they're useful sort of day in, day out. And here's an example of a feature that actually launched on the Galaxy Nexus phone called Face Unlock. So the insight here is that people find unlocking their phones a real pain. It's something they know they need to do because their lives are on their phones, their email, their contacts, lots of sensitive information, but at the same time it's very painful. So it's led to an interesting product solution, and really our challenge in marketing was to think of a way to bring that to life. Now, you could call it pretty much a product demo, but I think it's a pretty charming one. Let me see if I can play you the ad. I wish it was always that simple. So, another example, a campaign that we've been running to educate users about privacy and online safety. So we know that a lot of our users find this a kind of a complicated area. They don't understand what happens to their data. They don't know how to stay secure online. So this is a campaign that we launched in a year or two ago in many of our biggest markets. It's still running today. It's called Good to Know. In the UK, we do this partnered with the Citizens Advice Bureau. And this is an example in this ad of setting great passwords. So one of the internal security teams came up with a suggestion, which is great practice. Think of a memorable phrase, in this case, to be or not to be, turn that into letters and numbers. So it's very memorable, and you end up with an extremely hard to break password. So really useful, kind of good to know. And not only has this been helpful with our users, it's kind of won lots of praise too from the kind of people who care, governments, the people who care about this stuff too. So that's focus on the user. The second principle is open will win. Again, a belief that's held very strongly at Google. So on the product side of things, this refers to a couple of areas. One, open source. So developing products and code that we make freely available and we actively support and making that available globally to developers to work with. The other is adhering to open standards. So if there's a great standard that's already out there, a technology standard, let's use it. If not, let's work with others to come up with a solution and then again make that openly available. The two best examples of this are Android and this is Chromium. So it's not the usual Chrome logo you perhaps know. It's the logo for the underlying source code that we've made available to everyone. From a marketing point of view, before we get onto marketing, this also applies to information. So if you go, for example, to google.co.uk/privacy, you can see a whole bunch of tools that are about you and your data and privacy. For example, what we call the Google dashboard that shows you as a user exactly the information that Google holds on you. There's the ads preference manager, which allows you to sort of opt into different types of advertising and control the ads that you're exposed to. And we have a team of engineers at Google who call themselves the Data Liberation Front. Their objective is to make it as easy as possible for you to get information into and out of Google products. So for example, if you're using Google Plus and you decide you no longer want to be a user, you can take away your contacts, your stream, your profile, your photos, and we'll make sure that data is taken out of the product altogether, which is not always easy to do across all platforms. From a marketing point of view, here's an example of the Android marketing we do. So these are all lots of little Android pins that were given out last year at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. We've just had the same conference last week, a big success. So the Android, that little funny green robot, is freely available for any of our partners to use on a Creative Commons license basis. It means they can do whatever the hell they want with it. And in this instance, all of our partners on their stand had one of these little pins, and they became hugely collectible. People sort of were sprinting around Barcelona Mobile World Congress collecting them all. And I think it's a kind of a great metaphor of how we've sort of open sourced our brand and allowed our partners to build the brand for us. The ecosystem is effectively building the Android brand. It's not us who are driving that. So the third principle, ideas come from everywhere. Google is famous, I guess, for 20% time. I'm sure many of you have heard of that. So the idea that, and this really sort of exists more in engineering, a day a week, people get to work on a product that they're passionate about, an idea that they're passionate about. It doesn't have to be kind of central to what they do. There is another famous anecdote, which is that in the early days of Google, some engineers left a particularly complicated problem up on a whiteboard in Mountain View in the US. I kind of like to think it's this one here, but this talks about cattle mutations, so I don't think that can be the one. And some other engineers saw it, and over the course of the weekend, and God knows why they were working on a weekend, they cracked the problem. So when the original group came back in the next week, it was all solved. So very much this idea of working and collaborating across open plan offices and working on problems together. In London, the engineers actually run these demo days. So the idea of this is that it's an environment where you can come along with an idea and you can pitch it to your fellow engineers. And often this is done with a demo. They'll just quickly prototype something very rough and ready, pitch that idea, hopefully get a gang of people who are excited by that idea together, and off they'll go. And very often this leads to features in products or even whole new products. From a marketing point of view, we've got some great examples of this too. Often the best ideas come from maybe not unexpected places, but for example, very junior people in the organisation. So Life in a Day was an idea that someone called Tim came up with. Tim had been at Google. Anna's laughing because she was very involved in this too. Tim had been at Google for a couple of years, and his idea was, what if we gave or asked the YouTube community globally to film their lives on the 24th of July 2010, as happened, and then we tried to turn that into a film about the world and life in a day. This idea was pitched in a Dragon's Den, so we literally run a sort of a Dragon's Den style competition in marketing where anyone can come along with an idea and pitch it, and the best ideas get funded and turn into reality. And there have been several great examples of things that have come out of that. This is one of them. Tim and others pitched this idea to Ridley Scott, who agreed to produce it. Kevin MacDonald of Last King of Scotland fame produced the film. Thousands of footage, became a wonderful movie. And it premiered at Sundance, and Tim is very proudly a co-producer in the credits. So a pretty amazing story of how an idea can come from sort of very, if you like, humble beginnings and turn into a fabulous project like this. It's also about getting excited by the work that other people are doing. So ideas can come from partners. And in this instance, that partner was Arcade Fire and the director, Chris Milk, who worked with our creative lab in New York to come up with a very new type of music video. So if you haven't seen this, well worth checking out, thewildernessdowntown.com. It uses HTML5 to really showcase what the Chrome browser and browsers in general can do with this new technology. So it really pushes the browser and web technology to its limit, and in the process makes an amazing music video. The fourth principle, think big, start small. I think sometimes this is start small, but then think big. But anyway, from a product point of view, a couple of famous examples. So book search. Larry Page, the founder of Google, one of the founders, realized pretty early on, I guess it's an obvious point, that lots and lots of information is offline in books. So his question was, well, why don't we digitize that content and get it online? But before embarking on that, he himself went out and bought an ordinary scanner, got a bunch of books, started scanning them just to get a feel for how doable this is. I mean, is that even a feasible thing to take on? And realized with a few sort of back-of-the-envelope type of calculations that this is, in fact, something that we could do. And so book search was born. Another example from the product world would be AdSense, which began life where an engineer decided to run ads against content in Gmail, basically looking at sort of relevant ads to the emails that were being sent and written. And this turned into AdSense, in other words, running ads across all content in the web based on contextual relevance. So an idea that's developed and generated huge amounts of revenue for us and lots for our publishing partners too. In the marketing world, here's a lovely example. A couple of years ago, again, someone very young in the Spanish marketing team thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we went to the Prado in Madrid and took some really high-resolution imagery of the artwork there, and then added that as a layer into our Maps product so that people who were sort of exploring the world, or even sort of locals who were looking around the streets of Madrid, could experience some of the artwork in the Prado. We were blown away by how successful it was, not just sort of art historians who loved the kind of quality of the imagery, but also members of the public, the museums themselves, of course. And so that became the art project. We now have 17 museums as part of this project with some absolutely stunning high-resolution imagery of these images. It's amazing. If you zoom in, you can kind of see the cracks in the canvas and the brush strokes themselves. So it's really worth checking out if you haven't done. And we're on track to launch even more of these museums in the coming months. Doodle for Google. So I'm sure you're all familiar with doodles. Most of them come from a central team at Google, but actually occasionally, and some of our favorite ones come from school kids. Now, how did this start? Actually, when we launched our office in London in Victoria a few years back, someone in the office thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we got some kids from a local school to design the Google for the UK homepage for that day? And that's what we did. And it went down a storm. So then the next year it was, well, why don't we make this a nationwide competition and get all UK schools involved, and we'll choose the best one and put that up. And since then, this is a competition that's run in 20 or more countries. And despite being, relatively simple to pull off, it's, one of our most loved campaigns, and so one that we're very proud of. The next principle is never fail to fail. I think, the idea here is it's important to say yes to things and give them a go. You could argue that failing is a sort of a necessary part of taking risks and being in business. The important thing is to learn some lessons. And perhaps controversially, I'm going to talk a bit about our experiences with social products over the last few years, where it's true to say that we haven't always kind of covered ourselves in glory. So the first one, and this is one I'm guessing many of you haven't even heard of, is Open Social, which we launched back in 2007. The idea here was we wanted to develop a standard so that people building apps, social apps, could have those run across a whole bunch of different social platforms. The catch was that Facebook decided not to adopt Open Social, and as they got much bigger, this pretty much became obsolete. So that was the end of that. In 2009, we launched Wave. It's a great fanfare at one of our developer conferences, Google I/O. The issue here is that users never really understood how to use a product, which is a pretty fundamental issue. So it had all sorts of very interesting ideas and technology in there, but we struggled to sort of come up with an interface that people understood. Then Buzz, which launched in 2010, actually I think a very well thought out and useful product. However, we didn't think through the privacy side of things, and we absolutely kind of stuffed that side of things up. And so all of that has led to the launch of Google Plus at the very end of last year, where we've tried to take on board a lot of those lessons. For example, come up with an interface that means it's much simpler for people to understand. Launch the product with less fanfare. So we had a closed launch to friends and family at Google and called it kind of the G Plus project. And think very, very carefully about privacy. And actually Google Plus has been praised even by data protection agencies in Germany, who are notoriously tough on these things. So lots of lessons. It's taken a while to come up with a product that we think will now work. It's been hugely successful so far, obviously early days, but important to take those lessons on board. From a marketing point of view, I think, obviously we're all challenged with this. A lot of this is to do with figuring out what works and what doesn't, trying stuff, in other words, but learning the lessons from the failures as well as the successes. And often for us this is difficult because we work with products that have tens of millions of users, so it can be very challenging to understand whether we marketing are actually driving a significant difference in terms of kind of user uptake. So a couple of examples. Both for voice search, which is a really cool feature on phones. This is an example from Russia, where we had this Russian engineer effectively demo the product. It was a YouTube video and a TV ad that was run, very simple. And then we ran a much bigger, splashier campaign in the UK and other markets. Posters, as you can see, are kind of a very neat, creative idea. Now, one of these won a Cannes Lion. One of them was far more effective. It's a bit of a leading question. I think you probably figured out by now which one was which. But obviously this was the sort of more lauded from a critical point of view. This campaign here drove the better results. So the lesson for us is how can we combine these two? How can we make the right kind of media choices and come up with sort of beautiful creative that's also hugely effective? On to launch early and iterate. Again, a very deeply held belief at Google. So many companies will polish their products to perfection before launching them. The Google way is to pretty much beta everything. So Gmail was famously in beta for 5 years and Chrome for 1 year. I think increasingly for us this is about iteration and just making sure that we're constantly evolving the products that we launch. An example of that is search again. One of the benefits of having many users is that you can run what we call 1% tests that tell you, very statistically sort of robust, give you very statistically robust conclusions, but allow you obviously to test things on relatively small numbers of people. And we actually tested the color of our links on the search results in the belief that actually could we find a color that people read quicker and clicked on more and made for a better user experience. And it turns out there is a color that is better than all other colors. We ran 40 different experiments. And again, that's made for a better search experience and a better user experience. From a marketing point of view, I thought it would be helpful to talk about the Chrome campaign that we've been running across Europe for the last 2 or 3 years to explain how that's evolved and how we've tried to basically launch and iterate. So the initial challenge was to get word out that there was a browser called Chrome and that it was from Google. It was an awareness campaign. And so we did that, as you can see, with posters like this. And it worked in that awareness went up. But surprise, surprise, it rapidly became clear that people didn't know what a browser was. It was all very well telling them there was a new one called Chrome, but it's kind of, what is that? So that led to the next iteration of the campaign, a campaign, whatbrowser.org, designed to explain to people what a browser is. Now, category marketing, as you know, is sort of notoriously difficult. It tends to rebound badly on the brand that's leading it, but we felt it was really critical that we told people what a browser was and that they had a choice, right? There were many ones out there. We then had to figure out what it was about Chrome that most appealed to people. So we ran a campaign that tested 8 different features across search, across video, across mobile. So hundreds and hundreds of different executions. And every time speed won hands down, which is great because that's where the engineers invest a lot of their time. Hence, this version of the campaign very much focused on speed. And then lastly, we spent some time testing different creatives to figure out what was working. So again, I'm sure lots of you do this too, but perhaps an interesting learning from this particular example, we did some, if you like, conventional market research where we looked at these 2 creatives and tested them for likability with a fairly small sample of people. Likability, do you understand what the ad is saying? All the usual things, recall. And then we just ran the 2 ads head-to-head in an A/B test on YouTube using skippable ads and got a huge amount of learnings from that. So the number of people who watched the entire ad, I didn't skip it. We tracked that all the way through to downloads. Now the interesting thing here is that the ad on the left, Speedbots, comfortably outperformed the ad on the right, Browse as fast as you think. The ad on the right was the one that all of the conventional research told us was the most successful and the one that people understood. And I guess you can get some pretty enormous sample sizes as well. We're up to about 80,000 people in a pretty limited test. So it goes to show how quickly you can test this stuff online. So principle 7, be a platform, float all boats. This is actually a picture from our Google I/O, which is the big annual developer conference we run in the US. We have something like 5,000 developers there, and we kind of lift the lid on everything. So all of the APIs that we have across all of our products, all of the code that we give them, and spend time helping them make sense of it all. From a product point of view, perhaps the best example is Maps. So this is the biggest of our APIs by some distance. And how did it even come about? Well, we launched Google Maps, and a company called housingmaps.com started to effectively kind of reverse engineer our maps and take the maps and combine it with some of their own data to create their own product. Now, many companies at that point might have kind of served a legal letter, telling them to stop doing that. And we thought, well, hang on a sec, this is a brilliant idea. So we developed the Maps API. And now something like 50% of our Maps traffic comes through that API. In other words, people using our Maps product on their website and overlaying it with other types of data. I think there's a similar story to be told around how we did our Maps marketing. Around the time that I joined, the consumer team had very limited budget for Maps marketing here in the UK. And Maps was number 4 of all the Maps products. So they went out and they just pitched this API idea to agencies and clients. Why not use our Maps product in your marketing and on your site? So an early example of that was the Run London campaign that Nike did. But perhaps the sort of best example from that period is this BA campaign where they took Google Earth imagery and built it into their own ad campaign. These ads that you can see here, or this ad, at a time when Google Earth imagery wasn't widely available even on our own product. They ran it in their TV ads, And of course, they put the Google Maps product into their own site as part of this. So fabulous for us. Over time, hundreds and hundreds of partners have put Google Maps into their site, and it is now the number one ads product. So having that partner endorsement and having them use our APIs to get our products out there has been really helpful, I think, for them and for us too. And then one last example on this. So I'm actually off, this is sort of hot off the press, I'm off to Cardiff today to help launch the Getting Welsh Business Online, which is a particularly proud moment for me as a Welshman, which I'm sure you can tell from my thick Welsh accent. This is part of a bigger campaign, which I was launching a couple of years ago called Getting British Business Online. I hope some of you have heard of it. We realised that a large number of businesses in the UK don't have a website, and we felt that that meant that they were missing out. I mean, most people are now online looking for businesses, so if you don't have a website, you're at an automatic disadvantage. And there's plenty of research to show that businesses with websites are growing faster and so on. But we realised from the outset that this was sort of a way bigger than just Google, that we wanted to be part of a movement, but not the only player helping make this happen. So we see ourselves very much as a platform, hopefully as a catalyst to bring this about, but it's absolutely all about finding the right partners, government partners, web design agencies, small business federations, that type of thing. And here are the partners that we're working with in Wales and we'll be spending the day with today, and a whole bunch of agencies beyond that. So another example of floating all boats. And then lastly, making it matter. So to some extent, this is just about setting very ambitious goals, and it's something that Larry Page, our CEO, talks about often. He kind of argues that it might seem counterintuitive, but if you set enormously ambitious goals, sometimes those are easier to reach because they attract the best people. Often people aren't competing against those kinds of goals because they're deemed to be sort of scary and crazy. And so that's something that's really important, we feel, about innovation is making sure that what we're innovating in is something that will matter. We all, I guess, know our mission, at Google, and it's something that, aside from helping us build products, allows us or gives us license to, we think, touch many people's lives and we hope do some good. And I just wanted to talk quickly about a few examples of that. So this is a product that was put together very quickly around the time of the Egypt revolution and the demonstrations that were taking place. It was a partnership with Twitter and with a startup called Say Now that we Google had just bought prior to everything kicking off in Egypt. And the idea is that when the Egyptian government took down the internet in Egypt, people were able to call an international number from their phones and speak to tweet. So, say a short message. That would then, with a hashtag, that would then be available on Twitter and also available to other people who couldn't access the internet by ringing the same number and retrieving those messages. So a really nice example of how technology can continue to shine a light on areas of the world that for periods of time are deprived of the internet and access from the outside world. Crisis response is another area of where I think there's some good examples here. So this is a part of what we do with google.org. And this team has worked, I guess sadly, across many natural disasters that have taken place. So last year, for example, with the tragic earthquake and tsunami in Japan, we launched crisis response within 1 hour of the disaster. 1 hour after that, our People Finder was up and live. This is a searchable database of missing persons. And 1 hour after that, so 3 hours later, we had a link to a page from all of our Google home pages with NGOs, Red Cross information, and the People Finder itself. And within 48 hours, there was something like 40 million visits to the People Finder. A lot of this is run by people on 20% time, effectively volunteers who are happy to get involved in these. And it's something that we've sort of been able to help with in a number of situations. The marketing team subsequently took their media investment in Japan over the following months and basically directed people to the same People Finder. The next example again, sadly relates to what we're able to do after natural disasters like earthquakes. It's a platform that was first built in Italy by the team there, that's allowed, in this case, the community of L'Aquila to gather memories of a city that was devastated by an earthquake. So it's allowed locals to post stories, videos, audio, photos, and capture the memories of the city before it was destroyed. We ran something similar in Japan in the worst affected areas, and the platform's also been used in the area of Lorna in Spain, where there was a tragic earthquake. So the feedback on this, as you'd expect, has been tremendous. You know, for many people, it's a real comfort, and it's really very touching to see some of the stories that have been told through this platform. And then lastly, from Google+, an example of a great hangout that we did early on after the launch of Google+. So the story here is that the Dalai Lama was invited to Desmond Tutu's 80th birthday in South Africa, tried to get a visa and was refused a visa by the government, at which point one of the Google employees in Johannesburg emailed the Google+ team and said, well, hang on a sec, surely there's something we can do here. The bit on the left, by the way, is some text from an ad that we ran, but the bit on the right is a picture of, or promotion for the Hangout that we subsequently ran. So we managed to connect these two religious leaders over a Google Hangout, which for those of you who don't know is a way of connecting up to 10 people through kind of video conferencing technology. So they literally kind of hang out together online. And just again, a fabulous way of how technology brings them together. I really urge you to watch it if you haven't. It's hilarious to see these two religious icons sort of giggling away because they can see each other on the screens and they're kind of chatting. It's very funny indeed and very, very, very touching. So that I think kind of wraps up the 8 principles. Hopefully there are some useful examples that have brought that to life. Here they are again. And I would just stress, I think that for us, number 1 is the most important one. Focus on the user and all else will follow. So much so that in marketing, we've kind of boiled that down even further. And the way we think about what we do is know the user, know the magic, connect the two, which is very much our goal in marketing. So with that, I'll stop and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. Does anyone have any questions for James before he runs away for the train to Cardiff? Anyone have any questions? Yeah, one at the back. So there's a microphone on its way to you. And for those of you regretting checking your coats at the door, the heating is being turned up.
Hi, James.
Hi there.
It's good to see you again. It's been a while. The question is, as you're going through the presentation and we're looking at everything that Google has done, it's really hard to pin down what Google is. If there is a clear marketing message about Google is something. You know, 10 years ago, you're a search engine. Right now, you're, as you showed, you've got fingers in cultural, social, environmental. You're doing a lot of things. So I guess the question is, what is Google right now? And considering that you are a young company, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Crikey, that's a tough question to ask. Thank you.
What do you want to be seen as?
Yeah. I think part of the reason why Google has been able to innovate the way it has is because it hasn't tried too hard to define itself. So it's set very ambitious goals. The sort of scope of the business, as you rightly point out, is very broad. And it's willing to sort of pursue paths that it thinks are interesting and valuable to users and its customers. So it makes it very difficult for me, to be honest, to sort of be able to answer that in a very straight way. I mean, I think, yes, we do continue to sort of explore new areas and get involved in that, and I think that's a lot of the reason why we feel we're given license to innovate at the company. If you have a good idea, chances are you'll be able to pursue it. Having said that, I think we recognise the kind of challenge that's in your question too, which is we do need to be able to simplify things for our users and our advertisers, and we do need to do a better job of explaining what it is we do as a company and how we can bring all of this technology together. And that's something that I think we're going to be working on much more, for example, this year, trying to sort of remove some of the complexity, be a bit clearer about what it is we stand for. My background is much more in the B2B world, in the ads world, and I think we're absolutely trying to sort of distill down a much clearer message about how we can help businesses grow.